You don't have to understand poetry in order to enjoy it. But today the skill of reading poetry is getting lost. Speed reading, AI summaries, and bullet point lists have destroyed our ability to read in images, to enjoy the feeling of words, to not always search for their meaning. Welcome, I'm Andy, philosophy lecturer, and I've been reading and loving poems for almost 50 years now. And in this video, I want to show you how you can also open up a whole new world of poems for yourself to read, to enjoy, and to get happiness and meaning from them. Look, for example, at this one. Here are a few lines from a love poem by Pablo Neruda, but don't worry too much about him. Let's just read it slowly without trying to understand it. Just listen to the words, listen to the melody, and try to enjoy how it sounds. Here I love you. In the dark pines, the wind disentangles itself. The moon glows like phosphorus on the vagrant waters. Days, all one kind, go chasing each other. The snow unfurls in dancing figures. A silver gull slips down from the west. Sometimes a sail. High, high stars. Oh, the black cross of a ship. Alone. Sometimes I get up early and even my soul is wet. Far away, the sea sounds and resounds. There is a port. Let the words echo for a little while more. Keep them in your mind like the aftertaste of something nice, sweet, a fruit, a drink that you like. Perhaps you already found this poem enjoyable, or perhaps you're saying, like my daughter would, I don't understand this. But have patience for a moment longer. Rational understanding is not the only way to relate to the world and to receive input from it. The way we live today, with all the media that bombard us with content all day, we are very much trained to immediately look for the message, the point that is made, the one bit of information that we need to extract and use and consume. But for much of human history, this was not the case. Most of what we see and hear today is just words, information that is naked, that is removed from its context, ready to be processed. But imagine how it was in old times, before most people could read. If you were a farmer, you would go out to your fields in the morning, you would work there in silence, listening to the wind, the birds, the insects. You would see the sky, the trees, the mountains, your crop. All these things would actually give you information, but of a different kind. It would be indirect information embedded in this world context, embedded in the world, in need of being decoded, of being interpreted. The wind and the colors of the mountains would tell you about how the season is progressing. The clouds would tell you of the weather that's coming. The insect buzz would give you information on how healthy your environment was, on how well your field is being pollinated perhaps. The birds, their cries, the species you can see and hear, their flight patterns in the sky, this all would give you information about the world, about the weather, about how your crop is doing, about what's happening to nature, how the year is going along, when to expect your harvest, and how good your harvest would be. But none of this is symbolic information. That's all information that is embedded in the world, in the context of the world, and you have to use your own expertise to extract it from these signs that you see. You wouldn't have a calendar, a phone to tell you the time of the season. You would have to understand your place within the world by yourself, using these cues by feeling the passage of time, by feeling the changing of nature, by reading it off a myriad little observations. But again, it wouldn't even be reading. Our modern language fails us here. You don't really read the book of nature, you feel it. It's not a process of decoding the linear flow of information like the text of this video that I'm speaking to you now, but of taking in a whole picture at once, the whole state of the world that surrounds you in one particular moment, and letting your senses, your subconscious, your instinct take over and do the understanding. The result of this process will be a feeling, not a piece of hard information. You would feel the weather changing. You would feel your harvest coming closer. It will be a feeling situated inside a particular context that is uniquely yours, your feeling from your field about your future plans, about your crop, your concerns, based on your own experience and your knowledge and your past. You won't get any context-free advice in this way, and you would not want any. You want your understanding of the seasons and the harvest to apply to you and your fields and your family and your world. You would not have use for an abstract list for information that is not tailored to you. All the information you get would be specific to you, to this specific place, to this exact moment in time. Now, what does all this have to do with poetry? The same sense of feeling something happening that the farmer has is exactly what allows us to feel poetry and art speaking to us. Think of an abstract painting like this one here. You cannot understand that logically. Even if you could, if you dissected what is painted, the brush they used and the paints they used and so on, you will still miss the point because you are not supposed to analyze it in this way. Just seeing how it is made doesn't tell you anything about how to feel it, how to understand it, what the painter wanted to tell you. You must look at a painting like this, like the farmer is looking at the sky, and let it speak to you in its own language, in its own way. I think of it as tasting the words of a poem or the images of a painting. When you experience a bite of food, you can do it in two ways. You can either ask yourself, how was this made? You can analyze it, you can try to guess at the ingredients, the method of preparation, and get a recipe out of it, a symbolic instruction on how to reproduce the dish. Or you can go another way. You can just close your eyes, you can enjoy the taste of it, and you do not need to think anything at all. The second way will give you also some information. It will give you different information. It is not necessarily worse than the first, and arguably it's better. It brings out more enjoyment in the moment, not less. Now let's look at another poem and try to get the taste of it without looking at the ingredients. This one is by Paul Salan, who is generally considered difficult to understand. He is, but I would try to argue that the whole point is not to try to understand him. Instead, you should try to get into a dreamy state where you just hear the words, you hear the images, you let them pass through your mind without trying to make rational sense of them. Okay, let's try it. So here we go. The stone. The stone in the air which I followed. Your eye as blind as the stone. We were hands, we bailed the darkness empty, we found the word that ascended summer, flower, Flower, a blind man's word. Your eye and mine, they see to water. Growth, hard wall upon hard wall adds petals to it. One more word like this word, and the hammers will swing over open ground. I know that some will say that you need to understand these poems. They are coded messages about the Holocaust perhaps, and Salan did write about that, or about other events in the poet's life. And not trying to understand these poets, they would say, devalues the poetry. But people who say this usually work at literature departments of universities and make a living explaining poems to others. I won't entirely disagree. There may be multiple layers in a poem, and certainly in Paul Celan's poems there are these multiple layers, and some of them will be deeply rooted in the images, some of them in the sound of the words, and some again in their meaning or in the biography of the poet or in the history he is describing. That's fine. And if you can get enjoyment or insights from understanding the hidden meaning, then go ahead. I'm not talking to those who are already experts in reading, who know all about Salan, who know how to interpret him, and who know how to understand his poetry. But for the person who just encounters a poem like that for the first time, it would be bad advice to tell them to first read on the biography of the poet, to first read books on the history of the Second World War of Nazi Germany, and then try to relate the poet to this and to try to analyze every word. This is what schools do, and it completely destroys the enjoyment of the children in reading poetry. And after all, if the poet wanted us to do this, he would have written the meaning out. He would have written a pamphlet or an instruction manual or a historical essay. But the poet did not do that. He used the images and the words that he used and the language and the richness of associations because he wanted to give us these hidden meanings. He wanted to give us these feelings. And these are all necessary part of poems of this kind. And it would be a waste of the poet's effort to reduce his meaning to understanding and to the explicit meaning that comes from the history and the biography. So let me show you another one. This one is from a Greek poet I love, Yannis Ritsos. So I realized just now that all these poets did not write English, and the translations often ruin the work, but we cannot do much about that, right? Not reading Neruda and not reading Salan or Ritsos at all just because they didn't write English would surely be worse than reading them in translation. So here we go, let's have a look. The poem is called Forgetfulness. The house with a wooden staircase and the orange trees facing the azure big mountain. The countryside gently walks around inside the rooms. The two mirrors reflect the singing of the birds. Only that in the middle of the bedroom lie abandoned two fabric slippers of the old. So when the night falls, the dead visit the house again in order to collect something of theirs left behind: a scarf, a vest, a shirt, 2 socks, and then, possibly due to short memory or carelessness, they take along something of ours. Next day, the postman passes our door without stopping. Now listen to these words, to these images, listen to their taste, to their sound, to their music. The countryside gently walks around inside the rooms. The two mirrors reflect the singing of birds. Why are the dead careless? Why have they left behind a scarf, a vest, a shirt, and 2 socks? Nobody knows. And by concentrating on these questions, you're missing the experience, right? This all doesn't matter. What matters is the sound of the words. It is the echo of the images in one's mind. The nameless things that one can take away from it all. Some kinds of poetry speak to us as the sky and the hills spoke to the farmer of old. There is really nothing to understand there, and everything to just stop and be silent and listen to. Thank you, and see you next time.